if you really wanted to just build something and you're willing to give up anything for it, that means you're giving up your friends, your partners, your families, like I did in many cases, because I just wanted it so badly because I wanted to change something big in my life and for my next generation and all that. And then I was willing to pay everything to get there.
Have you ever made an excuse for why you weren't able to accomplish something? Or maybe you started a project, it got a little hard, so you quit. Obstacles arose, challenges got in the way. You said maybe it's not worth it. And then after some time, you realized, you reflected, you thought to yourself, I just made an excuse and I let something go that was worthwhile and I shouldn't have done that. Today, we're talking with Shahrouz Varshabi, and his story is going to change your perspective on excuses because this man made zero. He got it done. He is an Iranian-American entrepreneur with a passion for design and technology. He's currently growing Designity. It's a revolutionary design service that is disrupting the traditional creative agency model. Safe to say he is pushing the boundaries of what is possible, and his forward-thinking approach is putting him on the map. Riddle of the week: what do you call a pony with a sore throat? Stay tuned to the end of the episode to find out. That was the intro. Now let's dive into the episode. Here's where I want to start. You were born in Iran. Work ethic was a huge part of your family's values. Your father was a school bus driver. Your mom was a hairstylist. You shared a bedroom with your sister until you were 19. What character traits were instilled in you through your upbringing?
You know so much about me. That's pretty awesome. Yeah, I mean, it's just like honestly, growing in an environment like that, it just like makes me to appreciate like things, especially nowadays, and also it creates a personality that becomes more humble than anything else. So that's honestly thanks to my parents and the environment that I was born with, I would say.
I saw that you spent a lot of time after school hanging out in your mom's salon. What are some memories that come up when you think on those days?
Yeah, I mean, so it was fun, obviously. I mean, I could just do anything that a hairstylist could do. So that's another
Nice.
skill that I have that I haven't used, but maybe I use it one day. But yeah, I mean, it was kind of like interesting because for me, one aspect that was actually interesting was just me from early ages, or like when I was a kid, watching how my mom was actually dealing with clients. Obviously, when it comes to being a hairstylist, sometimes it could be a little bit subjective, and I could see sometimes that there are unhappy clients, and then she had to make them somehow happy, and having great skills of like customer success to convince them or offer them something and all that. So that was kind of an interesting thing for me to just like watching my mom as a kid, how you have to deal with unhappy clients. Sometimes you even just ruin something, right? And it's not easy to fix. So that was my highlight, honestly, of those days.
And I think that's a big testament to how it translates into the creative industry too, and how I've seen you value people, and you hear people and you like actually listen to what they're saying and their concerns and then move forward that way. And I think there's a huge part of like the creative journey that is super subjective. So when you're creating creative work and somebody's not happy, it's like, well, you know, what do we think is what? So I think you do a great job. That's cool that you've taken that from your mom.
Yeah, for sure. And it's even much more complicated, right? Because in design, yes, you create something, sometimes people don't like it, and again, it's subjective, but you could back it up by research and things like that, or you could just change it at the end of the day. But if you change somebody's hair color to something that
Yeah.
you don't like, and it's not easy to just return it again, and it's going to stay for some time, so it's a much more difficult situation to handle for sure.
I'm going to fast forward in the timeline slightly. So your uncle was the first person to move in your family to the US in his early 20s, and he would come back to Iran and visit. And you seeing your uncle's success gave you that entrepreneurial itch, and it inspired you to start your first company in Iran. What was your first business?
I went to design school, so I was studying graphic design, and for me, the reason I honestly started to consider graphic design was the fact that I was not a good student. I had a hard time reading and and learning, especially like boring things like history and geography. And I was terrible at maths. So my parents were constantly pushing me to sort of make it. And I was miserable most of the time because I was not just enjoying the materials that was given to me. So when I had to choose, so I thought if I go to design, I don't have to deal with reading so much, and I'm gonna be doing things that has nothing to do with reading, and it's more about creating and things like that. And my parents also agreed to that, so I started graphic design for that reason, and happened to be good at it too. And so when I started basically my undergrad, pretty much the first semester, because of the financial situation and all that, I had to also figure out a way to make money. So I did bunch of things, from printing students' projects by renting a printer and making some cash on the side, and then buying a printers, and then expanding to a couple of printers and things like that, and bunch of like side hustles on the side, so I could just pay my rent and everything, because I was going to a school in a different city than my hometown, Tehran. But at some point towards the second semester, so I basically found this guy who was a publisher, and he was also pretty much into starting a company and all that. And then together we decided to basically start a company which was a publication company, in order to create interactive books for kids between 7 to 12 years old, so that they could learn educational materials in a much easier and interactive way than the traditional way. And yeah, that was kind of like how I got started.
Wow, that's awesome. It sounds like you dove right in and didn't have too much like hesitancy behind jumping into the creative side, because you knew it was what you wanted to do right out of the gate. That's a pretty cool and rewarding effort for a first go around. That's awesome.
Thank you. Thank you.
Let's jump in the timeline a little bit more. You moved to the US, 26 years old. And I'm curious, one, talk to me about the decision, because I know that's like an emotional undertaking, because you're completely leaving an environment that you grew up with for something that's somewhat unknown. And then also the logistics behind moving, because at that time there was political tension between the US and Iran, and it was not as easy to make the big move. So walk me through it.
So yeah, there are two main reasons. So number one is that yes, I started the company, and then we did pretty well. So within the first few years, we basically expanded from one category into something about 42 different categories, and we had about like 20 employees, and things were very great. We were getting a lot of requests from schools for the books, who wanted to purchase in order to basically support their students and all that. So by the time that I was graduating, actually, our company also got acquired, and I was like 20 something years old, pretty early. So it was really interesting to actually build something during the school life that could be something much larger. So literally just experienced the whole process from A to Z, and then we decided to sell it to one of the major publications. So we had a great acquisition. So after that, I realized that, okay, I choose graphic design because I was not good in high school. But now that I do this company with my partner, then I realized that I'm actually not a graphic designer either. I'm more like a entrepreneur. So that was kind of like a self-awareness kind of things that I got to understand pretty early on. And me just sort of like starting the company from beginning to the end over there, also firsthand experienced all the challenges that exist back in Iran, in terms of like Iran is just not the right environment to do larger stuff, unfortunately, because of the economic situation and all that. So I wanted to be in an environment that I could think big and I could go even bigger. And obviously, United States been always great for thinking big and doing bigger stuff. So the one reason was that sort of wanted to change my environment so I could do bigger things. And my uncle, who's been living here since he was 18 years old, and pretty much he went through the same sort of a story that I've been going through and starting everything on his own and making it through and all that. So he was also a role model for me. And the fact that I had someone here was constantly in touch with me and encouraging me actually to set myself for a day to move to the US. I decided basically to just pause everything after that acquisition, learn English, which I couldn't even say hello in English during those days, and then sort of making a way to come to the US. And as you said, because of the political situation that still even exists, even worse than before right now, between the two countries, unfortunately, the only way to get out of the country is through higher education. So you either have to get a master or PhD. And just think about it, how difficult it was for me, a terrible student, to be qualified for a master degree. So somehow I made it. I got acceptance from one of the top design universities actually in New York City, Parsons, the newest school, and I made it here back in 2011.
Oh my gosh. Good thing you did. There was also there's a story where you had to travel to the US embassy in Dubai because there wasn't one in Iran, and then they rejected the visa and then you had to go again. That's like persistence. That's resilience to a T right there.
Right.
Super cool.
Yeah, there is no embassy back in Iran again because of the political situation. So if you wanted to get a visa, you need to travel to one of the neighboring countries, either Turkey or Dubai. So, and for me, it was not easy, right? Because it also cost a lot. So after I got the acceptance, I was like, all right, so I got the acceptance. I could speak a little English. I went to Dubai's embassy, and then they rejected me first time, which was really sad. And then you can't apply actually again for 6 months later. So it was really tough because I was not doing much. I was hoping to just make it. So I missed the semester, so I didn't get the visa. And then 6 months later, I came back, and it worked out. So they gave me the visa.
Talk to me about adjusting because you came to New York. You got a studio in upstate New York, and I just want to know the joys and the struggles of like making the shift, the cultural shift, like a whole new environment, having your uncle here, but kind of being on your own. And also, I'm curious, when you went to school, like you just had your company acquired, was it in your mind that I'm still going to be an entrepreneur through this? Or is it like, now that I'm here in the US, I might just get a job and call it a day?
No, I always wanted to be an entrepreneur since that experience, and I was constantly trying to set an environment myself so that I could actually continue the entrepreneurship life. So that was kind of the plan from day one. But I had to go through a lot of other things in order to prepare myself, right? Because when you come to the US, obviously, through a student visa, you are on the student visa, you cannot work, you have to just go to a school. And then once the school is done, then there is a process in order to work and get a visa. And there is a whole kind of a story with that I could share with you. But it was not even easy for me to gain my basically working visa and my green card and all that. So I had a lot of challenges over there as well. But in terms of adjusting to the environment, it was tough because yes, we went through the acquisition and I had some money, but pretty much within the first year or two that I came here, our currency dropped about 700%. And
Oh my
like
gosh.
literally just everything that you made became like nothing. So I was kind of like broke again when I sort of like came here pretty much within the first year or two. And then I was going to a school trying to figure out the tuition structure because I couldn't even get a loan and things like that. So I was also like working on the side, just like some freelancing and all that, trying to just make things out. But there were days and nights that there was a day actually literally that I was living upstate in a studio, which was like about an hour away from the city, and I was going to a school in Union Square in Manhattan. But there was a day, and there were many situations that I couldn't afford to buy a ticket to go back home, and I had to sleep in a school. in order to just like save like $10, $8 for the day after. So it was not easy, but I was totally fine with it because I knew that I'm doing all of this for a specific goal.
With the purpose in mind.
Exactly.
That's interesting. I've been stewing on that too. It's like when you have a clear purpose and you have a really strong why, there aren't a whole lot of things that are going to push you off of the path if you have enough willpower to keep going for these things. And I mean, you had it. I mean, clearly, right then and there in that moment. Let's talk about the birth of Designed, which is awesome. It's born out of your own experiences from struggling to find a creative career post graduation. And I really like that part of it because you're solving a problem that you personally went through. So you're resonating with people that you're solving the problem for. And there's a quote here that's from you, but I think it's slightly outdated. You'll have to tell me. And it's designers go to school in order to be educated and prepared for the real world. And unfortunately, around 44% of design graduate students find themselves unemployed 6 to 12 months after graduation. What were the early stages of Designed like? And was it difficult finding clientele to bring in to distribute?
Sure. So yeah, I mean, after basically I worked so hard and I got accepted to these design schools, Parsons the new school, and sort of spent so much money, like almost hundreds something $1,000 in order to get a master's degree and 2 years of my life. So my expectation was much higher. When I graduated, I was honestly very disappointed about the quality of the education that we got. And I felt in many cases they just don't teach you for things that are relevant to the market. Everything is like so outdated and all. And when I started actually looking for jobs, there were a lot of things that I didn't know about it. And I was like, so then why we didn't learn these things in the school? And then I realized actually it's not just me. There are other peers that also are struggling. And I saw a lot of people going and getting jobs that has nothing to do to the master degree that they got, which was a shock to me. And I'm like, you spend all this money. And if this is supposed to be one of the top design schools, so what is it like others? So at this point that I graduated about like 7-8 years ago, I never go back to pick up my certificate. So it's somewhere in the school. I just don't see value, honestly, to put it somewhere in the wall and just calling it like a master degree. So out of that frustration, I realized that, okay, so there is an opportunity here to create a platform so that these kids, especially design students, can learn educational materials, can actually, as they're learning educational materials, they can actually work with actual clients. So we put together this platform. It was a kickstart, actually, project first, raised like 10,000, something like that, built the platform, and it was great. Like we got, within like 6 months or so, I got about 6 or 7,000 users from different schools who signed up and says, this is great, we wanted to work with companies. And then companies realized that, okay, there is a platform for like recent graduates that they can outsource those projects. So they liked it, they came in, and they started basically connecting and working on the projects. And I thought, okay, so we are somehow like matching people together. And then when it was around figuring out the name, decided to sort of copy LinkedIn a little bit in a way, and just call it Designed, which then became a problem later on.
Yeah, LinkedIn didn't seem like they were super happy about that. Was it scary when they approached you and gave you did they fully sue, or was it like, hey, you got to knock it off?
No, we got a lawsuit. I
Oh
mean,
my gosh.
the thing is like, nothing happened within the first year. Like 2 years into the business, it was not a side hustle for me anymore. There was this time that I actually also got a job after school because I had to in order to get my visa situation settled, and I was doing like this platform on the side. So there was a time that things was working perfectly fine, and then I quit my job and I was doing this design in full time, and then things are just like working out. We are modifying the model and things like that, and we are also started the registration process for the name. And when I was registering it the first year, I got a notice from LinkedIn that says there are some concerns there that your name is too similar to us and your model too. I consult with an attorney, and then he said, well, they can't claim every names that ends with ed and in. So,
Yeah.
and your business model is not a social network. It's very different than that. So I would say continue with registration, and then if we get into trouble, we'll figure it out. So, and
Mm.
I listened and I did that. So about 2 years later, we got a lawsuit, which was about 200 pages with like six lawyers on it, that showed up at my door, and then all the reasons that we shouldn't do this, and so on. And it was scary and disappointing a little bit in a way, but it was a time that actually happened to be perfectly fine, because we were also at the time in the business that we were making a lot of changes in the business model and the nature of the business. And when this happened, my lawyer said, yes, we could go to Silicon Valley courts and then figure it out. It's going to cost probably like 30 grand, 40 grand, and you might win it or not.
Yeah.
Other option is like settle it with them, and then you just walk away from a name and come up with a different name. And since we were still early in the business and we would see opportunity in rebranding, decided to settle it with them. So we actually got a nice check from LinkedIn in order to walk away from that name.
Nice.
And then we used the money in order to rebrand. And we were thinking of, all right, so we are a design platform. We wanted to also be a community. So design, community, and came up with the name of Designity, which was only $12. And for LinkedIn, for Designity, I actually paid something around $6,000, which was the biggest mistake in my life to buy that domain.
Oh my goodness. Well, I'm happy it got recouped. That sounds like it came out best case scenario. Like, they ended up halfway funding or fully funding your rebrand. The name, now it has its own identity. I feel like when I think of Designity, it has a ring to it. Like there's personality to it. Like it represents who you guys are. And I don't think about LinkedIn when I hear it as well. Man, geez, that worked out great. Haven't heard from LinkedIn since. They've stayed away.
No, no. I mean, I know that since that they've been literally registering everything that ends with ed and in. So they have something a lot like about like 1,500 or 2,000 like applications with USPT, or trying to register every single name that is close to ed and in after they saw us trying to register it. So
Man.
yeah.
Let's talk about another big company that played a role is Amazon's Audible investment firm. I think it's something like NVP. They take a liking to what you guys are doing and they invest. Why do you think that Audible's investment firm invested specifically in your company during that time?
We're in the business about 2 years. We realized that there is a quality problem with our model. Companies couldn't necessarily rely to students to do projects. And in order to fix that, we basically invited professional designers or creative directors so that they could actually take a percentage and supervise those students or emerging designers, so that the quality of the work gets better. So that was the moment that our collaborative model was born, because then we also started adding senior designers and professional designers, and then creative directors could have access to this team of creatives and basically switch them as needed. They could work with a copywriter for 5 days and then a graphic designer for 10 days and all that. And creative directors would basically also stay the main point of contact for the company, which they liked and all that. So our collaborative model was born, and basically it started working very well. It was not just a platform for students anymore. It was a collaborative model. And we started making a little bit money. So it was enough that I could just quit my job and sort of like focus on this full time and all that. And originally when I started honestly raising money, I talked to many investors, and in many cases I got the impression that they're just having a hard time trusting me, because there is this Shahrouz guy here just doing this company so early stages. Okay, everything seems to be good. What if we just give him $1 million or whatever, and then he just walks away from the country and goes back to Iran? So what you gonna do, right?
Yeah.
And I don't blame them. That's just a reality. Like I was just a couple of years in the country, and Iran is not Germany that they could come and find you there. So nobody wants to come to Iran. Just I would go there and then come if you like, but nobody would come with this current situation. So after I realized, okay, there is that reputation problem, I changed my strategy, and I'm like, I'm gonna just suffer as much as needed and build this without any money. And I literally started reduced my cost to the point that I was Airbnb my apartment, and the room was Airbnb, and I was literally just living on a couch for almost 6 months with almost no expenses. And I decided to build something that starts making much more money, and then we'll figure out the once we have tractions enough, then investors going to think about it a little bit different. So got it to a really good position that, and then it was making really good enough money that I started hiring a couple of people. And back in 2018, we were actually approached by MVP because they somehow heard about our model, and they liked it. And then we set up a meetings, and the investor actually didn't invest first. They said, we like your model, but it seems that it needs a little bit more work, which I think it was still a little bit of a trust issue again. And he offered me office space. He said, come here, bring your team. You could actually just stay here in this floor, build your company for the next 6 months or so, and then we'll see how it goes, and then we could reconsider you in the future. And I took it. That was great. So I was working at Audible's office for like 6-8 months, and then at some point they came to us and says, okay, so happy to give you the first round of funding, and then things changed.
I love the story of you cutting expenses and sleeping on your couch for 6 months to make this happen. That's like making the dream work and doing what it takes. It's inspiring. I appreciate you sharing that.
Yeah, my rent was like 2,200 or something, and I was charging this poor guy, I mean, two of them, it was a 2-bedroom, like almost $3,000. So I was even making money a little bit.
You had to do it.
It was very cool, actually.
That is cool. So you received this first round of funding. I want to know about your conversation with Gary Vee, because that seems like that also altered the business model from per project basis to a subscription basis. And how difficult was it to implement his advice? How'd you even find him? How'd you see him? Did you track him down on the street, or what happened?
When I actually came across Gary Vee, it was like through some of the videos that he was putting out there. And then I started sort of like getting into him. And at first I didn't like him, to be honest. I thought he's just like bullshitting in many cases. But the more I listened to him, I'm like, no, he's not actually. He's right about many things, and he's just too honest about things that makes you sometimes a little bit uncomfortable. So I got to him. I was like watching all his stuff, and then the tips that he was providing, like marketing tips, entrepreneurships, and all that. So it was pretty useful. I was basically applying them in my day-to-day life, building Designity, and I had an actual company that time with investors on it, and then a couple of employees. And our model was a per project model. So pretty much similar to Upwork, Fiverr. Company would come over, create a project, and then they would get a quote, and then we would basically just execute on it. So it was a lot of challenge in terms of like figuring out how much does it cost. The nature of creative projects is that always changes. You start with a simple website, and then when you start in the middle of it, it becomes a more complicated website. So then it changes the scope of work and all that. And then there was a day I was actually on a train going back home, and Gary Vee is actually like doing one of these like live Instagrams. And I'm just like watching him and all that. And then he said, all right, I'm just going to bring in the next person up, and happened to be me. So I'm in a train, literally just, I'm up in his Instagram feed, and just he said, yeah, tell me about your company. And I said and all that. And then he asked a couple of questions about me, about the company, about the stage. And then he says, yeah, what is your challenge? And then I mentioned to him that, yeah, it's just clients changing the scope of work all the time, and it creates a lot of problem for our creative community and so on. And then he said, you should change your subscription model. That's it. Like, it's going to be much easier for you. to make money. It's going to be more stable, and then let them change the scope of work as much as they like. So it's a subscription. That's it. He said that, and that was the only tip that he gave me. And then for me, it was like a big aha moment, and I was like, holy shit, like he's right. Like if you do that, like so many things is gonna be actually resolved. And I thought the idea was genius and very great, but the execution of it was honestly very scary. So
Yeah.
I was very much scared to sort of like go back and say, guys, let's just change the business model into subscription base. So we started adding a subscription first rather than just changing it to sort of like see how it goes. And we actually started seeing some clients are happy with it. They're like, yeah, sure. So let's just do. But it was first 495, the first plan that we had, and we're doing everything for that money. So then eventually we see, okay, it's working. We increase the price to 995, still working. Then we killed the per project model. Now it's only subscription, and then we started creating different level of subscription with different type of creatives. And today we have three levels, starting from 3,500 goes up to 9,000 per month, which is working for different companies for different.
That is so wild that it was from an Instagram live feed. I would never have thought, and like so timely. It seemed like right when you needed it, like right when you needed to hear it in the midst of this per project basis structure, you're like, that's it. And I think there's something to be said about you implementing it too, because I think a lot of times I hear advice that I probably should have taken, and it takes me, a long time to realize, oh, I should have acted on it, or I don't act on it at all, and opportunity passes us by. But you took the leap and you went for it.
Yeah, no, that's Gary Vee's always tactic that he always says, I will tell you everything that you need to know, and I know like 80% of the people don't execute on it. So that's just a reality.
Designity seemed like it exploded in 2020. Like there seemed like a need for remote work. It increased rapidly. And one, if that's true, let me know. And then two, what growing pains came along with having to expand so rapidly? Because I imagine it was like, oh, we're getting another one. Oh, another one. Oh my gosh. Oh, okay. Now we have to adjust some things.
Yeah, so we were literally in office, still MVP Amazon office, and then the team was growing. Thing was going pretty well, and then we started seeing people are less and less and coming to the office, and we were like, all right, so there is this thing called Corona. Okay, that makes sense. And then there was a day that they said, okay, you cannot come to office tomorrow anymore. And then we were like, oh, what the hell? Like it's just like a virus. So we literally just say goodbye to everybody in the team, like in the office. We're like, all right, guys, see you in a couple of days or next week probably. Just let's see how it's gonna go with this virus and all. And happened to be Corona, and the office was shut down for 2 years. So basically, the first month of Corona, when we were just working remotely, it was a big shock because we stopped seeing new clients added to our subscriptions, and then the second month we started seeing a lot of cancellation. Like the first thing that we were just cutting was like design and marketing budget. So we don't want to do anything right now. Let's cancel. And then there was this week that I saw, okay, there is a lot of cancellations happening, and I really freaked out. I'm like, this is not going to be very well. So it's getting really tough. And I was ready to sort of have conversation with a couple of people to let them go because the business was just going very down. Investors were very confused. They were like, yeah, we could maybe consider like more funding for you to survive, but we don't know what's going to happen, so we prefer not to do anything right now either. So the whole world was just on pause, right? And then after like 2 or 3 months and after a lot of cancellation, just trying to figure it out, I see a plateau. I saw, okay, so cancellation stopped. They don't cancel anymore. And then we started hearing a lot of conversation that, okay, there are a lot of layoffs going on with the marketing and creative departments, because they don't want to do things, but at the same time, they want to cut the cost. But at the same time, as an active company, you can't pause your marketing projects. You still have to run ads. You still need video. You still need website. You still need branding, packaging for your products, and so on. So now they didn't have an in-house team, and they were like, so now what's the plan? Where to go? Upwork, Fiverr, yes, but you can't trust, you can't get quality out of those, and like working with agency is so expensive, we can't spend that much money in-house, is not an option. Designity, which happens to be a perfect model that gives you that reliability. Pricing is not that expensive. You get a creative director, you could do any sort of project. So we started getting a lot of new clients that we honestly couldn't handle. So whoever was coming in, we were like, you have to wait for like at least a month to be assigned to the creative director team. And things started going crazy well during COVID for us.
And I think the huge thing is quality, like you said. I'm sure going on Fiverr and Upwork, there's been times where there's a negative experience due to quality or due to freelancers not having the resources or structure in place to fulfill on certain things. But your model, it's like you have the creativity, you have the quality assurance, and you have the replicability, I hope that's a word, to continue to do it month by month. So it's super appealing for companies to come in and be like, this makes sense. And it's a subscription. So it's like the month they don't necessarily need it, they can put it on pause and pick it back up.
That's the beauty of it. Like we are using Upwork, Fiverr ourselves, like nothing really against them. You still could find people who are talented, and you could just like work with them, and it's just not sustainable, because every time that you have a project, you have to open up something new, go through the applications, and then you hire someone. Now you have to educate them about the process, about your brand and everything. And yes, there is a big risk if they would deliver or not, but you have to supervise them during the process, provide feedback and things like that. And once the project is done and you have a new project, you have to go through the whole process again. Versus Designity, that you have one point of contact who is the creative director, and that person works with different creatives, so you don't necessarily need to bring in different people and onboard them and educate them about the process. And Designity basically take care of that matchmaking process for the creative directors and all that. So there is a guarantee when it comes to deadlines, when it comes to quality. If anything goes wrong, you could just come to Designity and then we make it up to you. Versus Upwork, that you're going to be dealing with the freelancers individually. So there is a certain quality that you could get from those platforms, but when it comes to Designity, our specialty is basically design and marketing services, and we have a specific model to do it perfectly fine.
Got it down to a T. Love it. Tell me about this. So when you look back on your story, what parts of it do you think are replicable to anyone who is trying to become successful, like a successful business owner today? Like which parts you're like, you can take this and this would work for your business? Or it could be internal character traits, or it could be something you've learned throughout running your business.
There are a couple of things. Like number one is how much do you really want it? And what I mean by that is that do you really want to just build something and you're willing to give up everything for it, or you just wanted to start it to call yourself like an entrepreneur and a business owner? Like there's nothing wrong with any of them, but it's important to sort of like self-aware and understand that what is the goal here, because the approach would be very different. If you really wanted to just build something and you're willing to give up anything for it, that means you're giving up your friends, your partners, your families, probably just going to sacrifice a lot with your day-to-day activities, like I did in many cases, because I just wanted it so badly, because I wanted to change something big in my life and for my next generation and all that. And then I was willing to pay everything to get there. So that's kind of like one thing to sort of like figure out. And I've seen a lot of people that they still wanted to do something, but not to this extent, and it's still totally fine, but they could have a different approach for it. So that's one thing. The other thing I would say is, one thing that is also very popular in the US is just you have an idea, you wanted to start a company, the first thing you think is just go talk to investors and raise a couple of $1 million. And normally you could do that because there is so much money floating around, and You would have a big celebrations. You buy yourself a nice car and start building the company after. And then 3 years, 5 years later, everything goes down the hall and it doesn't work. That's why 95, 93% of the startups really fail, because they first raise the money and then they try to figure out what to build and how to make money out of it. In my case, because that was not an option for me, from day one, I really tried to figure out how to make money and how can we make money in a way that we could actually scale it. And that was a big advantage because it was very tough, but it was a big advantage because it created a very healthy environment that let company organically grow. And nowadays, that's the biggest, I would say, assets for investors that I talk to when they realize that we grow like this with almost no funding or very little funding in this environment that everything's falling apart, like COVID. Now we're running into recession and all that. So it helps you to have a really strong financials.
It's like, look what I can do without investment funding and imagine what I could do with it. It's like
Exactly.
night and day. Shahrouz, we are rapidly approaching the final question of the podcast. But before we do, I want to acknowledge you for all that you're doing. One, your story is so inspiring, crazy inspiring, your persistence, your dedication to make something happen. The second thing is you're so humble. Man, it's like contagious almost how humble you are. And also, I think something that I really admire about you that I've seen is how you treat people within Designity. Like, you build a culture that makes people excited to do the work that they do, and you give them the freedom and space and trust to do amazing things. And I think that's crazy valuable today, especially in how corporate America culture is currently being maybe displayed or represented. You're part of the change that says, no, I can create a good workplace environment for you guys. And I think that's awesome. I think it's incredible.
Sure. Thank you. Yeah, I mean, the way that we look at Designerity's culture right now is like trying to really be in a position to understand them. And the reason I say that is that in many cases you see like leaders or managers or CEOs are at the position that they are saying things or they are asking things because they have a higher position and they expect everyone to execute against it. And if they don't, they just get frustrated and they fire. And that's just not a right environment. In my case, because I was lucky enough to be a taxi driver, a pizza deliverer, like doing a lot of things in my life to survive. I was even a designer at some point, like acting as a freelance designer, exactly what others doing in our company today. So it helps me to understand why somebody is doing something or they don't do it. And rather than just creating an environment that there is this hierarchy of like, these are the managers, these are the bosses, and then everybody else is working under them, I'm really trying to create an environment that is transparent. Number one, there's nothing to hide. And then number two is everybody's at the same level. There is no boss. I said that many times to our team. We are about 85, 90 people right now internally. And I said this all the time, that there is really no boss. The only difference between me and you is that you are specialized in something, I'm specialized in something else. We have different skill sets, and yes, I'm older than you or you're older than me, so there's more experience here and there as well. So that's all. There is nothing more than that, really, and we should respect each other both ways. And if there is anything that I can help you, that you think my experience or my knowledge would be valuable to you, you could ask my feedback. And if there is something that I think your skills or being younger than me and fresh, that could be valuable for me, I would come to you for the feedbacks to figure it out. So that's kind of the environment that we wanted to create. And lastly, we wanted to also be in a position that whoever is working with us, they understand that Designity is not another agency or a staffing office or anything like that. We are trying to build the platforms that is disruptive, and we really want to be the next Airbnb and Uber for creative services. So that's our goal. And people who are working with us, they understand that, and they are here for that goal, to be part of that journey, not necessarily making a little bit money here and there.
I think you're headed straight toward that goal, and I don't see a world where you don't hit it. Tell me this, Shahrouz. Final question of the podcast: what does it mean to live a fulfilling life?
Man, that's a deep question. I mean, I don't know. Like, at what stage would you call life fulfilling? I think that would be the question. Like, I think for me, I think like a fulfilling or happy life is a lifestyle that you're making progress on it on a daily basis. Like, really, for me, it's just seeing others making progress in their career, in their personal life, like buying a better clothes, buying a better house, or like living with a better person, is just, to me, considered like a fulfilling or happy life. For me, it's the same thing. You're like, I always say progress equals to happiness, and that's really like the biggest value for me in life, because it doesn't matter how much money you have, if you're the wealthiest person or if you're the luckiest person being with the most beautiful girl in the world. As much as you stop growing in your life, you're going to become a miserable person, and then everything would be like meaningless. So, but once you're making progress on a day-to-day basis on a smaller stuff or larger stuff, that's valuable and makes you a better person, a more happier person.
Yeah. Shahrouz, where can people connect with you on the internet? Where can they say hi? Where can they say, I want to talk to Shahrouz about Designity. I want to get to know him more.
It's easy. Just search Shahrouz Varshabi. You could find my LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram. Everything is public. Like my handle is my last name, Varshabi, Varshabi. Pretty much everywhere. You could also come to Designity.com, find me over there. We are constantly hiring, looking for reliable, smart people to join the journey. So if you see yourself as someone who wants to be challenged a little bit and deal with a group of crazy people like us, we wanted to work with you. So
awesome. Those links will be in the show notes. Shahrouz, thank you so much for being on the show. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Nickolas. Have a good one.
That was the episode. You just listened to it. Shahrouz, dropping knowledge bombs. Don't forget to leave a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, and share this episode with someone you love and someone you want to stop making excuses. You see the potential in them and you want them to keep shining bright like a star. It'll take 5 seconds and is a great use of your screen time. The real reason you're still here, you want to know the answer to the riddle of the week. What do you call a pony with a sore throat? A little horse. That's funny because it's also the definition of a pony. Anyway, if you've made it this far in the episode, go ahead and listen to episode 129 with Austin Beal. He created a business from his kitchen, and if you liked this episode, you're going to love that episode. That's episode 129. It'll be in the show notes. Thank you for tuning in, and I will see you next week. Be strong, be kind, be disciplined. Fridays, 6 a.m. See you there. Bye!